Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Hi. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Western Hemisphere Education USA LL.M webinar series. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday morning or evening, wherever you are. This event has been a joint effort from all of the Education USA advisors in the Western Hemisphere, so it is a pleasure to have you all here. Thank you to our representatives for being here today. Today, we are going to be talking about personal statements, writing samples, and letters of recommendation. So it is going to be a great event. And I believe, Amber, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Marina. So I'm just gonna get us going and share my screen. All right, so as Marina mentioned, today's workshop is on personal statement tips, writing samples, and letters of recommendation. And as we go through today's workshop, these are some of the topics that we're going to cover a little bit more in depth regarding what to write and what not to write in your personal statement, talking about the writing samples that schools are looking for and how those writing samples are used in the admissions process. Same thing with the letters of recommendation. And then finally, we are also going to talk about addendums and what they are and how you should use them. So to get us going, I'm going to hand it over to Martin Camp.
Hello, everybody. My name is Martin Camp. I'm the Assistant Dean for Graduate and International Programs at SMU Dedman School of Law, which is in Dallas, Texas. We've got a screen here. You can go back. You're going to have access to this PowerPoint. You can get all the information about my school and about all the other schools there. This program is not about our schools. This program is about you, and what we're wanting to do is give you tips and ideas and an opportunity to have the best presentation about who you are when you apply to our schools. So I'm going to go ahead and switch off of this screen and go to the presentation itself. We're talking in my presentation about the purpose of the personal statement, and I think it's very important. Before we do anything, we have to ask the why question. Why are we doing this? And the how question, which is how is this information going to be used? And the who question, who is going to be reviewing this process? So understanding the answers to those will help you as you're deciding what is it that I want the person reviewing this in the place I would be interested in going to understand about me, the scholar, me, the person. So let's switch to the next slide. Here's what the personal statement does. You are a lot more than your transcripts. You're a lot more than your grades. You're a lot more than what shows up on a CV. And this is what your personal statement is about, because the schools need to understand that. They're going to be looking to put together an interesting combination of students from around the world for their class. And every one of you is unique. When I say this is about you, this conference, our presentation, each one of you is unique. Each of you have dreams and goals and aspirations. There's a reason unique to you about why you're considering an LL.M. And let me tell you something. I think that makes you amazing, because a very small number of people in the world even get to be lawyers, which is such an important profession in every country. Keys to the courthouse, leaders in politics, providing justice. This is the privilege we have as a lawyer. And then here you are selecting to be even a smaller group that is willing to reach out of your comfort zone, to study in another country, in a second language, and try to understand. So you're very special. and unique. And we want to know about that. And we want to know what it is about the LL.M. Why do you want it? What are you going to do with it? And then why are you at this fair? Or, are you only interested in the US? Are you interested in other places? These are the types of things that are going to be revealed in your personal statement. Let's see the next slide. And here's the thing, we make our decisions holistically, meaning we take everything into consideration. We look at many factors, and it's your grades that tell us you're a scholar, you've done well, you've always worked hard, you've succeeded as an academic. And your CV tells us who you are. What have you done in your life? Are you a practicing attorney? Are you still a student? Have you volunteered for anything? Have you been involved in any movements? What have you done that would be on a CV? And the references we're going to talk about later today are people that know you, and they give us a picture from the outside looking in about this person that's applying for us. Next slide. So your personal statement is just that. It's personal because it's in your own words, and it's a statement that lets us know who this wonderful applicant is and why we should admit them and consider them for financial aid, because those are two separate decisions. But I know for most people, being able to have financial aid is a huge component of a decision about where they go. And it sets you apart from numbers and awards and every other applicant. It makes you unique, and it's your chance to show us who you are, what you want, and why you're interested in us. The next slide. I get the privilege now of passing this baton to Yaritza Peña, who will now talk to you more about personal statements and go into some other things that you need to know before you sit down and write that personal statement. Thank you for letting me visit with you.
Thank you, Martin. Hi, everyone. My name is Yaritza Peña. I am the Assistant Director at the Fletcher School at Tufts University, which is in Medford, Massachusetts. And I'm actually calling in from Vermont. So, very much in the beautiful Northeast portion of the country. You can switch to the next slide. Thank you. So the personal statement, which I truly believe, and I'm sure a lot of my colleagues agree, is one of the most integral, most important part of your holistic application process, because it really is the opportunity for you to tell us who you are in your own words. Your resume doesn't speak for you entirely, your transcripts, all these other materials that come together to kind of paint this narrative, paint this picture of who you are, doesn't quite capture the way you can in your own writing. So some pointers that we want to share with you in regards to how to really make the best use of your personal statement in your application include really communicating what your professional interests are. Again, just reading a resume or, just reading the courses that you've taken doesn't necessarily translate for us what it is that brings you to apply to our school, to our program. This is the opportunity for you to tell us about your professional and or academic experience. So where are you coming from? Give us some context as to where you've been, and not only where you've been, but what you've done and how it's impacted you and helped you make the decision to apply to this program. Furthermore, why are you interested in this program? There are a lot of LLMs out there, as you can see, there's a lot of us here today, and there are even more programs. So what is it specifically about the program that you're applying to that really captures you and really, entices you to want to enroll? What is it that's unique about this program, and why is it the right place for you to pursue your studies? Also, why right now? Why not in 2 years? Why not, 2 years ago? What is it about this time in your life, in your career, in your law trajectory that really brings you to want to apply this year, this moment. Something else you should really take the time to write about in your personal statement is what you hope to gain from the program. So obviously you want to be here, but the purpose for going to an LL.M program differs for everyone. And we really want to understand your intentions, both good and bad. So here we say, you know, what are the gaps in your knowledge or in your experience that you feel like you really need to use your graduate education to fill? What is this LL.M program going to bring you that your experience or your prior academic experiences haven't done for you already? Additionally, how do you see yourself contributing to the community outside of the classroom, well, in the classroom or outside of the classroom in a meaningful way? You know, you're not just necessarily just going to class and then leaving. There's a broader community that you really want to talk about, and how you are going to contribute to that community as a student there. Is it, you know, through extracurriculars? Is it through research, working with faculty? Is there a specific faculty member that you're really excited to work with? Whatever it is, we want to understand how you see yourself within the community, with your other students, with faculty, with staff, and how you fit in. And of course, you know, with a professional program, we want to understand your career goals, and how you believe this program will help you work towards these goals. Especially in an LL.M career, you know, in a law, what is it within the law that really, again, draws you, empowers you, you're passionate about, to bring to this program? And what is it that you're going to hope to tackle with this new, you know, education, with this new degree, with this new insight afterwards? So, you know, for some people, they have a very clear vision of what it is they want, you know, their 5-year plan, their 10-year plan. That's fantastic. Some people, it's a little smaller. You know, you want to do this program to then explore this or do that or consider this. But really, this is your time to be really genuine, very honest, and I can't stress enough, truly illustrate who you are and why you feel like you're a fit for us. This is your opportunity to tell us things that your other materials won't necessarily capture. Maybe, you know, personal interests. Can you tie those things in? Is there a specific moment in your career that really made you pivot, turn, and decide that the law in general was what you wanted to pursue? So this is what we're really interested in finding out in your personal statement, really connecting the dots, and painting that picture of who you are, and how you can contribute to our communities. And I'll leave it with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Yaritza. So again, my name is Amber Featherstone, and I am the Director of International and Graduate Programs at Wake Forest University School of Law, located in North Carolina. And so bouncing off of that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what not to write in your personal statement. So again, we've explained that the personal statement is supposed to be about you. It's where we really learn the most about you as an applicant to our school. And so you'll see on the screen here a list of things that we don't want in this statement. So we're not interested in quotations. We're not interested in what other people say, or, you know, famous quotes from the past. We want to learn again about you. It's very important to make sure that your personal statement has been edited so that there are no grammar or spelling mistakes. You also really should have someone else read your personal statement so that you know whether you have really given the school everything that you want them to know about you, or whether you've, what we say, spread your message too thin, meaning you haven't been detailed enough, or you haven't really fully explained everything. Again, don't write about someone else, don't write about the law, and don't even restate the information that's in your resume, because we have your resume. So we know about your career path and what you've done thus far. So again, really more, this is just about you, or one aspect of your life, or an event that has happened to you that has really made you who you are, and that has led you to this decision to apply for a law school in the US. And then finally, don't mention a specific law school unless you are planning to edit your personal statement for every school that you apply to. It is very disappointing as an admissions officer when I read a really beautiful personal statement, and then at the very end, they say that, you know, and this is why I want to go to a different law school other than Wake Forest. So just be really careful with your editing to make sure that if you are going to be specific about a school that you're applying to, that you make sure that you change your statement for every school. So I've got a few examples here. So one of the things we say is don't be general or vague, right? So I want to pursue an LL.M degree in the US to study law. Okay, well, you will study law and an LL.M in the US, but you know, why? Why exactly do you want to study law? What type of law do you want to study? You know, you might say, oh, I want to study law to help people, but in what way? Tie that into the type of law that you want to focus on. You know, if you want to focus on criminal law, how is your knowledge of criminal law going to help people in your country or in your practice of the law? And then Yaritza mentioned talking about what do you hope to do after you complete the program. And again, be specific, talk about those career goals that you have, talk about those next steps that you plan to pursue after this one-year program. And then, as I said before, don't mention another school, right? So, you know, again, if you are going to tailor your personal statement, be really specific about why you're applying to that school. Why is Wake Forest Law a good fit for you? And, you know, and then don't say great things about us and then at the end say, and that's why I want to go to New York University. So again, give specifics, but also make sure that you're being very careful when you edit your application materials and when you're sending those off to different schools so that the right personal statement goes to the right school. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Sarah Schwartz. I'm the Assistant Director of International and Graduate Admissions at the University of Connecticut School of Law. And for any of you who do not know where Connecticut is, I've put a little map on the slide here. As you can see, it's conveniently located between Boston and New York in the northeast of the United States. Next slide, please. And at UConn School of Law, we have 5 unique LL.M programs, as well as an SJD program. I've put some of the hallmarks of our programs on the right here. So if any of you would like to come to my Zoom room after this presentation, I'd be more than happy to speak with you about some of the features of our 5 LL.M programs. Next slide, please. So today, bouncing off of the personal statement, I'm going to be talking about another feature of your application, which is the LL.M writing sample. Now, the first question that comes to mind when we're talking about the writing sample is, do I need it? And the answer is, it depends. So I really encourage you to check the admissions requirements for every school that you're applying for, because it will differ. And even among the panelists who are presenting to you today, I can tell you that some of us require the writing samples, such as UConn School of Law, and others of us don't. So the first tip is really to check the admissions requirements and make sure you know whether or not you need your writing sample. Now, the second question after do I need it is going to be why. So if you find that a school you're applying to does require the writing sample, why are they asking for this? Well, there are several different reasons. The first is that it demonstrates your academic or professional writing skills on a legal topic. So this is kind of another piece of the admissions puzzle. It's a different type of writing than your personal statement where you're really talking about yourself, your interests, your goals, your passions. The writing sample is showcasing your preparedness for academic studies, and particularly legal studies. And so we're looking at what are your analytical skills? How are you able to reason and think through a legal issue? In addition, it's another way to show off your professional or academic interests. I'm going to talk through some different examples of writing samples in a minute, but it might be a piece of work that you've done for your first law degree or in professional legal work that you've done before applying, and it's a really great way to show another side of you as a candidate. In addition, it can factor into scholarship decisions. We're not talking about scholarships today, but as you know, many scholarships are merit-based. So showing really great professional or academic work can be something that can be a deciding factor in some merit scholarship decisions. And then finally, it's another way for schools to gauge your English language proficiency. So again, you'll want to make sure that this is a good example of your academic English writing that can show that you'll be prepared to engage in rigorous legal studies when you arrive in the United States. Next slide, please. So I've just drawn on a few examples that are from actual applicants who were admitted to the University of Connecticut School of Law so that you can see what some good writing samples would be. The first example is from our U.S. Legal Studies LL.M program, and this applicant submitted a memorandum on incorporating a new business. And so this really showcased a type of legal writing, a very specific type of writing, a memorandum. So we saw through the formatting, for example, that this student had professional legal experience, that they knew how to prepare a memo. This could also be something like a brief, and it shows your legal writing experience on a specific topic. Next slide. The second example was an applicant to our insurance law LL.M program. And this applicant submitted an academic paper, and it was on liability insurance in aviation, in the aviation industry. And they showed their analytical skills through this paper because they were able to explain and analyze the liability insurance sector from different angles in this academic paper. So that's another example. And as you can see, it was directly related to the LL.M they were applying for. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Next slide. And then my third example was an applicant to our Human Rights and Social Justice LL.M program. And this applicant actually came from the South America region, and she's a current student at our school. But she submitted a report reviewing cases that were represented by a human rights NGO where she was interning as an applicant to the program. So while she was applying, she was an intern at a human rights NGO, and her writing sample really showcased the work experience that she had, also the passion for this particular line of work. Again, it had a connection with the LL.M program she was applying for, and it showed us what type of work she might want to pursue after her LL.M as well. So gave us kind of a sense of where she was coming from and also where she was going. So these are three really great examples of different types of writing samples you could submit. Some again, from your work experience, others could be from your academic background. So there's really a broad range of different writing samples you could submit. Next slide, please. Great, so I just want to leave you with a few tips and tricks for your writing sample. The first category is related to content. So as I've mentioned, this should be a legal topic related ideally to the LL.M you're applying for. So that will give some coherence to your application to show us that you have some experience, you have some interest in the LL.M that you're applying for. And with the content, again, it could be something that you've prepared for work, but if that's the case, please make sure to remove any confidential information that would be part of that writing sample. In terms of the language, like the personal statement, you're going to want to make sure that you've proofread this. It should be clear and concise writing. You absolutely want to avoid any grammar or spelling mistakes. And a question that we get sometimes is, can I translate my writing sample? So say that this was an academic paper that you submitted for a school in a country where another language is spoken. And the answer is yes, you can translate your writing sample if you need to do that. And then finally, for the length, at UConn School of Law, we ask for about 5 to 8 pages. Again, I would check with your admissions criteria at specific schools as this could differ, but as a general guideline, around that 5 to 8 page length. And you may be submitting a paper that was originally much longer, but just keep in mind, if you're submitting a 30-page paper, we likely won't be reading all 30 pages. So make sure that from 5 to 8 pages in the beginning, if that's all that we read through, that we would get a good sense of your legal writing skills. And with that, I'm happy to pass it along to our next presenter, Mary Beth Busby.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Beth Busby, Director of Graduate and International Program Admissions at Northwestern Pritzker School of Law in Chicago. Thank you all for being here. My portion of the presentation will be about letters of recommendation. Next slide, please. Actually, you can go one more too. So the first question is, why letters of recommendation? Why do admissions professionals like to get letters of recommendation about applicants? And the first reason is they give us qualitative information about you. You know, we have your transcripts, we have your TOEFL scores and your resume, but letters of recommendation give us more personal and descriptive information that we really can't get anywhere else. It gives us a different perspective. Things like communication skills, your ability to work with others, your maturity, and of course, your potential as a student. Next slide. One of the biggest questions that I get, or questions that I get most frequently, is who should write the letter? And before you make that determination, I think there's a few things that you should consider. First and foremost, above all, it should be somebody that knows you well. Don't choose your recommender necessarily based on status, but rather how well they know you. If that person doesn't know you well, they won't be able to give us specific information about your abilities as a student and about those other things that I mentioned previously. We often get very vague and general letters, and they may come from, you know, the named partner at your law firm or the dean of your law school. But again, they're kind of meaningless unless we get specific details about you as a person and also examples. Another thing to consider is, will this person say nice things about you? And it seems like that would go without saying, but every year I get letters of recommendation where the recommender actually says, I don't know why this person asked me to write the letter, or the letter's very brief and you can tell that, you know, that the interactions weren't positive. So if you're still in school, think about professors where you did well in the class. You know, were you a regular attendee? Were you contributing regularly to the classroom discussion? And did you have a good relationship with the professor? If you're working now, think about your working relationship. Were your interactions positive? Did you receive praise for your work and positive evaluations? If the answer to any of those questions is no, you might want to move on to the next person. So that's just something to, you know, broader considerations as you're making the determination. Next slide. So another question that I get with frequency is, should the recommender be from a professor or from somebody in a professional setting? And I think the answer to this question really depends. If you are still in school, we will absolutely be looking for a letter of recommendation from a professor or a faculty member. You're applying to be a student, so professors can speak very specifically about your capacity in this regard. And the information provided by academic referees is invaluable. Talk about your work ethic, your participation in class, your writing ability, your intellectual curiosity. All of these things are very important to us. If you've been out of school for a year or two, I think this is kind of the sweet spot. I think it's very appropriate to have one of both, an academic letter, but also maybe a letter of recommendation from your employer or your supervisor. These two types of recommenders will say different things about you and give us a more complete picture of you. They know you in different environments, so it can be very helpful to have both. And finally, if you've been in the workforce for 6, 7, 8 years, we'll understand if you're not still in contact with your faculty members and aren't really able to get an academic letter of recommendation. So in that case, I think it's perfectly acceptable to have, 1 or 2 professional recommendations instead of academic. Next slide. So just a few final tips, and the top one should trump everything even that I just said. Follow the instructions. If the law school is asking for an academic letter of recommendation, you've got to try to make that happen. So, first and foremost, look at that. Also look at the number of letters of recommendation that they're seeking and make sure you're following that guidance. Stay connected, and this is especially true for people who are going to work before their LL.M. Stay involved, stay connected to faculty members, keep them up to date on what you're doing and all of those things. That can make it a lot easier to reach back then and get that letter of recommendation. Provide a copy of your resume and perhaps even your personal statement to your recommenders. That way, what they're saying in their letter can sort of resonate with your application, so it is more cohesive and gives us a better picture. And just, beyond just giving them a copy of your personal statement, discuss your goals and motivations with them. Again, this will allow them to really write a directed letter of recommendation for you. And finally, and this is a little bit strange, but be prepared to write your own letter. These are obviously very busy people, professors and lawyers, and they may ask you to actually write it yourself, and then they'll sort of make edits and sign off on it. So those are just a few considerations about the letters of recommendation, which are a very important part of the application process. So with that, we'll go to the next slide, and I will turn it over to my colleague at GW, who will talk about, I don't know what you're going to talk about. I'll just turn it over.
Thank you, Mary Beth. My name is Shanaz Joshi. I'm Director of Graduate and International Programs at the George Washington University Law School, located in Washington, D.C. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to talk about what it means when we say an addendum. So you've heard from all my colleagues about how to put together a really strong law school application. And when you are putting your law school application together, obviously your goal is to establish and to show to the admissions committee that you're an exceptionally strong candidate, that you're an accomplished student, and that you have a lot to offer to the law school. And so, as my colleague said, we're going to read all of this in your personal statement, your letters of recommendation, obviously your transcripts and resume. But what if there is something in your application that might, what we would call, raise a red flag? So in these cases, you want to be very transparent, and you want to be able to show to the admissions committee that you're cognizant of this and that you want to express yourself, to explain the situation. Don't just sort of skip over it or not address it directly, because then the admissions committee might not consider your application strongly because there's certain gaps that are missing. So what is an addendum? And again, this is an optional part of the application process. If you're unsure about it, I always recommend you reach out to the admissions officers at the respective law schools, talk to them, email them, ask them what to do. And most times, if not all, they'll come back to you and say, please submit an addendum. So an addendum is basically an additional statement that is going to clarify the gaps in your application. And as I said, it gives you the chance to explain not only the irregularity, but to sort of clarify and give history to the situation that you are trying to address. It gives context to what happened. So it's basically a one-page statement. It really should not be more than about 1 or 2 paragraphs, at most 3. And when you're writing this, you're going to address what you are trying to convey to the admissions committee. So basically, it's an overview of the situation. State what happened and be very objective. Keep the emotion out of the addendum. Basically, keep a list of the objective facts and then describe what caused the situation, how you changed as a result, what happened. And then in the 3rd paragraph, explain how you've been on a better, more positive path since this episode. And, for example, if you're talking about not having passed a course or some failing grades because you were sick, explain that, explain the illness, and then say, look at the rest of my grades, see how much I've improved, look at the trajectory of my academic application. So basically, you want to give context to what has happened and give an explanation of what changed since that time. Next slide, please. So when is an addendum needed? When do you actually need to submit this document that I'm talking about? So for example, a lot of times somebody goes through high school and then takes a long time, backpacking through Europe, working to make ends meet for the family, and you haven't gone straight into your Bachelor of Arts program or Bachelor of Laws program, so there's been time off from school, more than usual. Have you taken a longer time to complete the degree because you were working full-time and needed to support your family? As I mentioned earlier, your poor academic performance. Did you have cause for the academic performance? Were you facing family or medical issues? Was there a reason where, for a certain amount of time in your law school period, you had less than strong grades, poor grades or failing grades? And then in some instances, did you have a disciplinary or criminal record? These really should be addressed and talk about whatever the academic misconduct was. If you've had criminal charges, you need to lay it out there, explain all the facts, explain how it was resolved, what is the current situation, and be very straightforward in your application. So it's basically the opportunity to explain any aberration in your application. And it gives you a clear sense of how to do this with the committee. When you're talking to them, explain what is the part of your record that you are, trying to resolve, and they will tell you how best to address it. Some cases, you have the opportunity not only to write an addendum, but maybe talk to an admissions officer directly, and they will do an interview with you as well. At GW, we do these type of interviews just to get a better sense of the applicant and where they're coming from. We understand, law school is rigorous, it's challenging. And of course, as human beings, we face many personal situations in our lives while we're in study programs, while we're trying to manage family, while we're trying to work. So an addendum gives you that opportunity to put your best self forward, to show the committee that you have had the situation, you've addressed it, and you've actually explained how and what happened. Thank you. Next slide, please. And I'll turn it over now to my colleague from Colorado Law.
Hi, everybody. My name is JJ Ilsing. I am from the University of Colorado Law School, which is a part of the Greater CU Boulder campus in beautiful Boulder, Colorado. Thanks so much for coming out. Next slide. Okay, now that you all have reviewed some of the materials that you're going to have to submit as a part of the application process, we thought it may be helpful just to couple that with the actual timeline. And as you begin to plan to draft these materials, to procure these materials, to submit these materials, we felt it would be helpful to kind of review deadlines and kind of what deadlines mean. In the course of this short presentation, I want you all to be aware of not just our LL.M application deadlines, the internal scholarship review that may occur at some of the LL.Ms that you programs that you apply to, but in addition to that, the scholarship deadlines for external scholarships, third-party scholarships that are not offered by the LL.M program or the law school you're applying to, but you would be eligible to apply to. And please bear in mind, I should note when I say that I get this question often, and I do want to emphasize you're eligible to apply to as many third-party scholarships as you want to. You could literally receive $43,001 scholarships, and we would have to process $43,001 scholarships. My financial aid officer would be very unhappy with me if we made that happen, but we would make it happen. So there are a number of deadlines that you may need to take into account as you begin to plan to submit your application materials. Obviously, with the LL.M application, there's going to be a strict deadline. Our applications are going to close every year. But we're a little bit more specific than that, and some programs may have different deadlines that have different dates. So as you begin to review the LL.M programs that you have an interest in, you may run into something that we call a priority deadline. At Colorado Law, we do have a priority deadline. And the priority deadline may work differently from school to school, but the way that it works for us is that all the way up until the priority deadline, everyone gets the same equal consideration for admission into our program. If you complete your application beyond the priority deadline, but before our firm deadline, we'll still consider you for admission, but we may take other factors into consideration. For us, the most important factor is whether or not we have the ability, like literally we have an extra seat in our LL.M program. So we're going to take our anticipated numbers into account if you miss that priority deadline. Other schools are going to have early action or early decision deadlines. That is probably occurring right now, actually, honestly. We are currently in our admission cycle for next year. So some schools may have early decision or early action deadlines that are literally occurring right now. What the benefit to early action, early decision is if you submit your application early, it's completed, you can get an early decision and early action. Sometimes that may require you to firmly commit to that program. If you do get the early action decision, the deadline may occur, the deadline to accept an offer may occur earlier in the admissions cycle. In terms of the timeline, and I've got a little graphic here for you. Generally, again, right now, early action, early decision deadlines are happening, applications are open. If you are for running rolling applications, meaning we are considering your application immediately upon receipt, you may also have rolling scholarship decisions. As we move into January, March, you're going to begin to encounter priority deadlines, potentially scholarship deadlines. And then later in the admissions cycle, April, June, you're going to encounter deadlines to accept offers, deadlines to accept an offer of admission, deadline to accept an offer of scholarship. You're also going to begin to need to start the visa application process. And then as you move into the summertime, hopefully you have gotten into a law school that you wanted to get into, the numbers work for you, and then you of course, you're working on that visa application. I did miss one deadline, and of course, hopefully, like I said, you get admitted to a program. There's going to be a deadline that occurs in the spring, probably, and that's going to be an enrollment deposit deadline. That's something that a school is going to require you to do. You're basically going to have to confirm that you're attending the school, confirm that you're accepting a scholarship, and you're going to have a deadline to do that, and that may require a deposit. Deposits range anywhere from $50 to $2,000, just depends on the school. Next slide. And that's basically it for deadlines. Hopefully it helps you all have a better idea of the timeline that you're going to need to adhere to as you begin to plan to apply to your LL.M program. Of course, I think the most valuable aspect of these types of presentations are not just the opportunity to hear from us and from other LL.M programs, but to actually engage with us, to come and talk to us and ask your questions and identify what may be unique about a particular program, a particular law school, and how it matches up with your interests and or your needs. So after the program, right now, so we will be soon transitioning to our Zoom rooms. Please come talk to us, come ask your questions. Don't just go to one school, go to multiple schools. You might find different answers to different questions, or different answers to the same questions, rather. So I definitely encourage you to stop by and talk to all of us, ask all of us questions. Email, follow up. I think we're going to receive your contact info, so we will reach out to you, of course. So there will be some follow-up. And then lastly, in addition to all of this, please bear in mind, I know that Education USA and the entire Western Hemisphere has done a wonderful job in terms of promoting these events, and they do have more events coming up in the future. So please be mindful of the events on November 8th, November 9th, and then November 10th, addressing a variety of topics that are going to be relevant to you and your interest in further legal studies. Thanks so much for coming out. And I don't know if Education USA wants to close or not, but we're very grateful, and we look forward to talking to everybody in our Zoom rooms immediately after this event.
Thank you so much, everyone, for this wonderful presentation. It's so much information and so concise, and it was just really great. I have a few questions here in the chat. We have a very good question from Claudia. She's saying, regarding the topics that we should include in the addendum, what happens with a gap year in your professional performance caused by immigration reasons? Is this a topic that I should include in an addendum or my personal statement?
That's a great question. And if you want to actually address it very specifically, you can add it as an addendum, because it does it is considered a gap year. And if it's more than 2 or 3 years where you haven't worked, there is a reason to explain that to the admissions committee. So an addendum in this case would be entirely appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have a question asking about how long the Zoom chat rooms will be open afterwards. I'll take that one. Honestly, there's not a specific time frame. It's as long as our wonderful representatives are available. It is a Saturday morning. And as long as you all have questions. And so there's not a specific time frame, but it is just for today after this moment. All our sessions are being recorded. This whole event has been organized by the entire Education USA in the Western Hemisphere, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to put now the Zoom links in the chat, and you can run over to these Zoom rooms and talk directly to the representatives and ask a million more questions. Let me just add those here.
If I could say one other thing while you're doing that, you're going to have all the access information for all of us, and people will be very responsive to emails. If you have things in particular that you're not able to talk to somebody about today in a Zoom room or whatever, school admissions officers are always happy to talk to students. And so I'm happy to talk to you by Zoom on a different meeting or a different time. I know everybody else will make themselves available. This is a crowded morning, and we all want to see as many of you as we can. But when you reach out to us, we will respond back to you.
And also make sure to look for an Education USA office near you in whichever country you are, because Education USA advisors are happy to help you with your application process as well. Just once again, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. It has been a pleasure. The links are here in the chat. I will keep sending them. I'll keep this room open for about 5 or 10 minutes just to make sure that everyone has the links. And you've also received them in your email if you registered for today's session. So thank you so much. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Coming out, everybody.
Thanks for coming.